So I have been wanting to talk about this for a while, but I have just been delaying it and delaying it. But after last night's performance, we have to talk about it. Manchester United have a centre-back problem. Now, those of you that watch my streams will know that I have been wanting to talk about this for several months now because there is something with our whole centre-back department which has been frustrating me for quite a while now. And the reason why I want to talk about it after last night's performance is because I just don't think the pair of them played particularly well at all. And that's ignoring the red card. I think even up to that point, defensively, we weren't really good enough. I don't think our centre-backs did a very good job. So, the problem is these two centre-backs, but also all of the centre-backs at the football club, have weaknesses which make it difficult for us to press cohesively as a unit, for us to press as a team and be super aggressive, and really jump on the front foot. We know that Michael Carrick typically has preferred pressing high up the pitch, but trying to keep one extra man on the last line at all times. So we might press in a diamond with normally Kobe Mainu in here, who can cover a bit more ground, but last night we saw a bit more of a flat 4-4-2 more regularly. But the problem is, we're having a +1 on the last line, which means we're going to be caught a little bit short somewhere up here, which isn't ideal, but providing we trap to one side of the pitch well enough, that isn't too much of a problem. Now, problem number one we have is that we are just terrible at the moment at trapping to one side. That is an issue with our forwards, but the other issue is over here. So we are leaving ourselves 2 versus 1. This was Dominic Calvert-Lewin last night, and we left ourselves with 2 centre-backs up against a centre-forward, which isn't a bad idea. The striker is often a threatening player, so why not put 2 players on him to try and stop him? The problem with Lisandro Martinez and Yoro last night was just the physicality was seriously a problem. And if there's a position where you want some size, you want some brute force, it's centre-back. And we didn't have it. And we'll see a little bit later on that there are so many other things that we lack in the centre-back department as well. But in this game, with Lisandro Martinez and Yoro, you've got 2 players who just aren't very good in the air. They're just not good aerial defenders. Lisandro Martinez never will be because of his size. Yoro probably has more potential. He has a higher ceiling with where his heading game could go, but right now it isn't particularly good. He doesn't use his body very well, and over the past 18 months there hasn't been enough development in his aerial game, so that's been a bit of a problem. And last night Calvert-Lewin may not have won the duels as such, he may not get the statistics and the numbers, but what he did do was unsettle our 2 centre-backs, and the second that you can unsettle defenders, everything around it starts to fall apart. It's all well and good going super aggressive in a high press, but if when the ball comes here from outside into the striker, you can't win that tackle there, then you're going to have a problem. We saw it for one of the goals last night. Lisandro Martinez doesn't win the challenge on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and just a few moments later, Leeds have the ball in the back of the net. And that's because our centre-backs were too weak. The other problem we've got is if in the future we were to sign new central midfielders. Let's imagine you've got Balabra and Elliot Anderson, right? Just extreme mobility and physicality in the centre of the park. And we were to have a manager next season that then decides, all right, you know what, let's go man-to-man, literally all over the pitch. Every single position, let's go man-to-man. The problem is, we can't. We can't do that because we don't have the centre-backs that can play in that fashion. The goalkeepers for the opposition will always be able to go long up against these 2. So that's why last night really prompted this conversation. Now, some people will say last night was not our main centre-back partnership. You know, we have several people either injured or suspended at this moment in time. We were forced to play those 2 and didn't have much choice. The question that I would ask you guys in the comments is, which 2 would you actually go for? Which 2 centre-backs would you like to build Manchester United on? Let's say next season we qualify for the Champions League and we're playing away at Real Madrid, away at PSG, away at Bayern. Which 2 centre-backs would you want to be the partnership? When I look at them, you know, I think there are things that each individually they are quite good at, but I also think there is so much that they're poor at. And one of the big problems is availability of the senior 3. Centre-back is a position where quality, of course, is very important, potential and all of that stuff, but you want some experience. And our 3 experienced centre-backs in the past 2 seasons have missed in total 92 football matches. Now, when you consider that this season we will only play a total of 40, that's a lot of football that these guys are missing. So this is one of the problems that we've got at centre-back. We simply have players who aren't available. Of course, Lisandro Martinez makes up most of those numbers, but just generally speaking, do you trust the fitness record of our experienced defenders? I personally don't. The best ability is availability, and we don't seem to have that at the back. The other problem we've got, though, as you sort of go through the numbers, you go through the players, you go through sort of their strengths, there's so much lacking here. For example, which of these guys are actually very, very good passers? Which of these are really good passers on the ball? It's these 2, right? But on the right side, we have people who are sort of doing the bare minimum in a possession, but not really anything more than that. Which of these guys are amazing at defending in the channels? You know, Lisandro Martinez isn't. He doesn't have the mobility for it. Heaven's not bad. Maguire can't do it. De Ligt is alright, but he's not immense. And Yoro has proven that he's struggled in games where he's been required to defend out wide. So that's a problem. We don't really have defenders that can defend out wide. Which of these guys can defend aggressively in the middle of the park? De Ligt, potentially. Lisandro Martinez, potentially. And maybe Heaven, but not Maguire and Yoro. We just got defenders that can do one thing or another, but we just have a real lack of complete centre-backs. Box defence. Maguire's great. De Ligt is really strong as well. But Yoro, his box defence, not particularly impressive. Lisandro Martinez, not very good at defending the box. And Aiden Heaven is okay. I think there's a bit of a smaller sample size here, which doesn't help him. Perhaps one day he'll be really good at it. But again, a bit like Lenny Yoro. Right now, he's not amazing at it. And that's really a problem. How about, you know, just anything, really. Anything that you can think of, the defensive side of the game. I don't think you can come up with a pairing that ticks every box. For example, you might go to two youngsters, Heaven and Yoro, but then you go, well, there's not amazing aerial defence here. There's not amazing leadership here. There's not amazing box defence here. So perhaps you take one of them out. You put Lisandro Martinez, for example, in at centre-back. Then you go, well, there's a lack of mobility and there's a real lack of aerial quality. So to address the aerial quality, you might go for Harry Maguire. But then you say there's a lack of passing ability. It just seems like no matter what sort of centre-back duo you turn to at this football club, there's something missing. And I think that really affects us when we want to be, especially defensively, a team that can press high. How many of these guys are ready to step into midfield and be aggressive? When we're squeezing high, you know, let's just take a couple out to make the numbers make a bit more sense. Let's go with this centre-back duo. We're squeezing high. Cunha's gone high. Sesko has. Amad. Bruno Fernandes backing up the press. We're man-to-man all over the pitch. How many players do we have that can go and win those situations? Not many. So we need to find a solution here. Now, I think pretty much the only solution is recruitment. Of course, some of it is coaching. The likes of Lenny Yoro and Aiden Heaven are very young, so they can develop a lot over the next few years, I would hope. I hope we give them that opportunity. But the other guys are sort of at that point in a career where you're not going to add an awful lot. You know, Lisandro Martinez isn't going to become taller. Maguire's not going to become quicker. De Ligt isn't going to become this amazing passer. So some of it has to be done through recruitment. The problem is there are so many other positions that we need to address. You know, we saw last night just a massive issue that we have in midfield, but also the big issue that we have on the left side of the pitch as well. And there are other positions which need work. So we need multiple profiles almost at centre-back, but we can probably only sign an absolute maximum of one. But I would be doing it, personally. I feel that we need one. And I think what I would prioritise is someone that can defend vertically. Just vertically is good at their job. I'm not so worried about the channel defence. I think a large amount of the channel defence you can cover with a fullback. For example, you could build possession with a back three, and there you go, you've got a fullback now who can defend that channel. What I would prioritise is someone who is great defending this line here. The vertical line straight through the pitch. That is what Manchester United needs. Someone that can defend vertically, and then sort of individually defend vertically by being able to jump. You know, be strong in the air and defend our box. So that's what I'd really be looking for. So that when we press high and we put the opposition under pressure and they start to panic, they're forced to play the ball long. They send that ball long. What you've got to be able to do is then punch that ball back at them. You need someone who can be aggressive in the air, beat this big centre forward like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, dominate them in the air and punch the ball back where it came from. We didn't have that last night. Maguire's the only one who does this super reliably. De Ligt would be next best. But we need someone who can do that regularly, someone who can go and win the ball in the air. The other thing that we need in the sense of vertical defence is someone that can step into midfield at times. There are those moments where if you go man-to-man in midfield, you can see yourselves opened up a little bit, right? So imagine these guys, that's the wrong tool. Imagine these guys are 3 versus 3 in here. Sometimes someone's going to drop in there, the centre forward or a winger or a 10, and you've got to go with them. Maguire's good at the long ball, the aerial stuff, but he's not good at this. So this is something that we need. Someone who has sort of the mobility to be able to jump into midfield and defend that way. And then the final thing that I want, sort of continuing on that vertical plane up the pitch like this, is someone who can defend the box, because we don't have enough players that are good at this. Maguire is one of the very best in the world. He said it himself last week and he was absolutely spot on. Getting someone of Maguire's quality in the box whilst being able to do this other stuff is difficult because it makes you one of the best centre-backs in the world, but it's definitely something that we need. Someone who can just handle the core, the centre of the pitch. I spoke about it in this morning's video. The spine was a real problem and we've got to address it. On top of that, I would like it if this centre-back profile could bring us something in possession as well, because we have a very carry-first culture at this football club. Lots of people that want to pick up the ball and drive. Kobbie Mainoo, Bruno Fernandes is very forward-thinking. Cunha wants to carry the ball. Ahmad wants to dribble. We've got lots of players who play in that way. Dalot likes a carry, for example, as well. We need a centre-back on top of Lisandro Martinez who can pass the ball from the back. Maybe that's where we can bring some of our tempo. Lenny Yoro, for example, is quite a good ball carrier. He's quite good at stepping out from the back. De Ligt isn't bad at it either, but they need to be partnered with someone that can pass. And honestly, we've got Lisandro Martinez, we've got Aiden Heaven as well, who are both good passers of the ball. I would quite like one that can play on the right side. So in terms of the profile that I'm looking for so far, it's that vertical defending. It's that compactness through the middle of the pitch. It's box defence and then a right-sided bias in possession. That is what I think Manchester United need. So that in these games, Bruno Fernandes doesn't have to drop so deep. Last night after the red card, Bruno was basically playing centre-back just to be someone that can pass forward. Now, of course, if we recruit well in midfield, that will go a long way to addressing this problem. Of course it will. But I also think we can help ourselves with a centre-back. I think it will partner the other guys better. Maguire, for example, is actually quite good at carrying out from the back, but not amazing at passing. The same for De Ligt as well. So I think in possession, we need a player here who is a bit lighter on their feet than what Harry Maguire or like Casemiro is, for example. Someone who's a little bit lighter on their feet in the first phase, can receive that ball under pressure, but then someone who can progress the ball, someone who can pass it. Whether that's punches through the lines or big switches, we need that profile. Now, they don't have to be the quality of Lisandro Martinez, because at that point you are looking for like the most ridiculous centre-back in the world if they can do all of this. But I just want a different level of passing to what we've got currently. Lisandro Martinez is the peak. I want someone a little bit in between. Even just Aiden Heaven's quality on the ball, but for the right side of defence. And then all those defensive traits as well. I just feel that it's something that we're crying out for. Now, this video perhaps hasn't been as in-depth or as sort of overproduced as what other videos might have been in the past, but it's just a conversation that I've wanted to have for a long time. I wanted to get it off my chest because I think it's something that a lot of people will disagree with. I think if I'd have said this a month ago, people would have been quite happy with our centre-backs, and I get it. We've got 5 of them. 5 centre-backs should be more than enough, especially when we've got the academy as well. But when we break down the 5 profiles, I just don't think any of them right now at this particular moment are complete enough to really take us where we want to go. Now, I get it, we need to sign other positions and they probably are the higher priority. But if there is an opportunity that comes up this summer to spend £50 million on a right-sided centre-back who can be dominant defensively, is physical, good in the air, strong, can go man-to-man, but can also pass the ball just to a semi-decent level as well, then I think Manchester United should be all over it. I really do think it's a position that we need. Yes, I love the idea of us being this expressive side on the ball that blows teams away, but ultimately, if you can't defend, if you can't press consistently, if you can't get pressure on the ball, you're going to struggle to control games. People talk about controlling the game as being a thing on the ball, in possession, but it's just as important that you can defend if you really, truly want to properly control a football match. And that's something that United don't have from their centre-backs at the moment. And I honestly think we're desperate for it. This is much higher up the list for me than what it probably is most people. But I need a centre-back this summer. Manchester United need a centre-back this summer. What we will do another day is look at some potential options. I've sort of described a little bit of the profile today. Another day we will look at the player that needs to come in. For now, it was all about just making my point clear. I think we need one. I've wanted to say it for a while. Didn't feel like the right time until now. I think everyone saw it last night. Lisandro Martinez suspended, but often injured anyway. Maguire suspended, but again sometimes injured. De Ligt always injured. Heaven and Yoro inexperienced and lacking things in their game. I think we need something in there, but those are just my thoughts. I want to hear yours in the comments down below. Do we need a centre-back or am I overreacting? And if we do, can you give me some names? Can you do my job for me? Let me know some players that I should be looking at. But apart from that, we are now finished for today. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.